Okay, so to start and to clarify, these are all your personal opinions and you do not speak for your company/corporation.
Okay,
Yeah. So could you please introduce yourself, your role in your industry, and your area of expertise?
certainly. My name is Trisha Mayer, and I work at Microsoft. I've been there for a very long time, and I've actually held many different roles across business and engineering and marketing. And over the last several years, I've worked in research and in particular in AI research.
Mm,
And now I'm currently working to help our technical sellers to bring research into their selling conversations as they help their customers move to AI.
that's really cool. Research is what I want to do too.
And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm working on my PhD. So I'm
Wow,
in research and I'm working on my PhD in philosophy, in process philosophy.
that's so cool. I really like philosophy. Um, and how long have you been in your field?
I've been in my field probably about well more than 30 years, mostly 40, because I worked in education and academia before I went into the tech industry, and now I'm kind of in both. I'm in the tech industry, but I'm also working in an academic setting.
Wow. Okay, so you're the perfect interviewee for me.
We'll see.
I think you are. So, in your own words, could you explain what generative AI is and how it works in your industry?
Okay, I will. This might be a little challenging for me because I might go back and forth between wearing my technical industry hat, which would give you one answer, and wearing my philosophy hat, which will give you a little bit of a different answer.
Perfect.
So, in my industry hat, what I would say is that generative AI is a technology that allows humans and computers to interact and allow computers to create more than they could create without the human, and the humans to create more than they could without the machine. And so generative AI is that capacity and capability that the computer and the human work together, because humans were the ones that created generative AI.
Hmm.
And then with my philosopher hat, like how would I think about generative AI? I think we're seeing more and more the redefinition of what creativity is and really understanding agency as human agency. Like, this is something that I want to do and I want to create, and really reframing that to something that is broader than just individual, but something that recognizes co-creation. And that's co-creation with a computer. And so when I look at generative AI that way, I don't think of just this AI system generating things. I actually see it as a co-creation process, which really expands the notion of what we think about as human agency. I hope that made sense.
I like the philosophy definition, but maybe that's because I'm partial to philosophy.
Well, the good thing is the technology industry, in fact, I think all industries really need to invest more in the field of philosophy and
Yeah.
understanding humans and understanding human intelligence, because these new technologies will affect the way humans are. And so, really understanding the philosophical aspects goes hand in hand with understanding everything from the design and the algorithms and all of that. It really needs to be a multidisciplinary approach, and philosophy needs to be at that table. So it's a good thing that you like it.
And do you currently use any AI tools in your daily work?
I do. I use it both in my work and my studies. So I use Copilot at work, mostly in Teams. I'm using um, after a meeting, when things are recorded and you have a transcript and a summary. Those are really nice because they're quick references.
Mhm.
Um, and I do a lot of research at work. using AI. And sometimes I'll use generative AI to create visual representations of complex ideas. And then in my studies, I use um, AI really to do a lot of my research and discovery and looking for articles and materials and related ideas and things like that. It's kind of like a super search function in a research aspect.
Could you talk more about using AI to generate something for a complex idea?
Yes. So sometimes when you're explaining an idea that is multifaceted and is like multiple ideas coming together, sometimes a visual image of that, whether it shows the linear nature of the ideas coming together, or whether it shows the relationship between different ideas and how something then, like a Venn diagram, when you're looking at a Venn diagram, you see a couple of different ideas, and where those things overlap, you see a new thing. And so sometimes when you have different ideas and they're overlapping and creating something new, a Venn diagram is really useful. So that's kind of just a small analogy of why, and this is why infographics are popular, and they help people to grasp concepts in a very pictorial kind of way.
That's really cool. I should start doing that. I've been struggling with Excel.
Oh, and it, what's really interesting is I have colleagues in my student cohort who really struggle with philosophical ideas and trying to get really abstract ideas to be more concrete. And so what I've seen some of the students do is create either mind maps of the ideas, or they'll create like timelines of different ideas that have come together to make the new ideas, or just do using different visuals as a construct to help them to process the information and understand it better is really helpful.
Oh, that's really interesting. And how do you think using AI in this way has impacted your efficiency and creativity?
Um, I'll answer that more from a student standpoint.
Hmm.
I can go through I can discover a lot more material and I can also dive into material a bit more. And and so it does help me to kind of distill certain definitions and ask questions, such as if I say, what is this particular concept, and then how does it compare to these other concepts? Like I can get that answer, so I don't have to rely on connecting with the teacher. Like I can get that answer, and that really kind of helps me to go, oh, okay, like I get that concept better now. I can go on to the next thing. And so from that perspective, I think it is very useful. And in the work standpoint, I think, and even in school, like if I couldn't make a meeting, but I really wanted to understand what happened at the meeting, I could either spend, an hour watching the recording if it was recorded, or I could just get the summarized version, which is the kind of AI distilled version of what occurred at the meeting. And that's just a much more efficient way of me getting the information. Now, I will say there that these what you get out of these AI systems in that aspect is never ever as good as having physically been there and had the experience
Yeah.
myself. But what is really great is even when I'm there and I have the experience myself, and also I have these notes to use, that's even better. So it just kind of augments what we do.
Yeah. And could you speak on the creativity aspect of it?
Um, in what sense of the creativity aspect?
Like from previous interviews, some people say it does not help them with creativity. Online, a lot of people say that AI might stifle creativity, but the majority of people that I've interviewed said because AI takes away a lot of the mechanical tasks that they have to do for work, it allows them to be more creative.
Um, I think that there's a spectrum on this. So let me just use my studies because whether I'm a researcher at work or I'm a researcher in my own personal studies, I'm using AI. I'm getting just a ton more information coming in that I can work with. I can then get clarity on terms. So I have a lot more knowledge, not only information, but I have a lot more knowledge and insight that I can work with, which is all great. Sometimes, though, I think the negative side of that is so let me just say all of that helps me creatively because when I sit down and I write my paper, I just have so much more to work with, and it's really helpful. And I have a much better understanding of some of the terms because I've been able to use it. All of that's good, helps creativity. On the flip side, sometimes I think that it doesn't so much stifle creativity, but what it does is it kind of polarizes creativity because you have so much information that all of a sudden you're like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, or maybe I'm still missing more information. So all you're doing is you're pulling in all of this information, and then you have so much information that you can't even move forward because you're stuck. And so I do see sometimes people get so much information that through using AI that it does cause that polarization and that just stifle. And it's a way of stifling it just because now you have so many choices, you don't even know where to start.
That is an interesting counterpoint. I've never thought about that.
The other point of that is um, there's value in focused depth work that you get distracted from with AI. So for example, I took a German idealism class and I pulled in a whole bunch of material from all these different philosophers from German idealism. And it was kind of overwhelming because this is very dense philosophical material. There's so many of them, there's so much material. And what I really found was there was this one philosopher, he goes by the pen name of Novalis. If you like philosophy, you probably love him. And he was a romantic out of the German idealism era. And when I just really went in depth and I stopped reading all of the stuff written about him and reading all of the stuff that AI generated about him and just read his work and went more deep into who he was and his story and all of that, I discovered so much more and I found more meaning in the depth
Mhm.
than I did in the breath work. And so I think one of the things that I'm not so much concerned about is AI going to help us or harm us creatively because I do think humans are going to continue to create. Where I really worry is so we don't have a crisis of creativity looming with AI. I think we have a crisis of meaning looming with AI. And because of that kind of breadth and amount of information that we can pull in with AI, we don't as humans go deep. And that's really where that meaning happens. And that's the part that I'm more concerned about with AI.
That's interesting, right? Because AI usually it kind of reduces everything like to an average or a statistic. It'll never be the same as actually reading the work of a philosopher.
Yeah, and really the only way that you're gonna be able to work your way through the hallucinations of AI, which I will assume will get better over time, and I think we should assume that that will get better over time. But even today, I was using AI to get some detail on a book that I'm reading, and they brought up actor network theory, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I'd like to understand who was the who coined this term actant that I was looking up, and um, who created actor network theory. And it came back with somebody that I had never heard of, and I thought that was weird. So I went into my book and I was looking more deeply, and I found a different name. And so I said to the AI, um, I'm not sure where you got that because this other person is credited with this theory. And the AI came back and said, oh, you're right. Thanks for the correction. It's really here. This other name that it pulled out was completely made up name. Like there's not even that person. So
Oh,
in order for us to really, it's not only meaning, but it's actually truth, you know? We do have a crisis of truth in AI because the systems aren't that good yet. Um,
yeah.
but we also have, but let's pretend that it was all true. If I wasn't deeply reading the book, I wouldn't be able to make these connections. And so the meaning I would have had lost. Anyway.
Yeah, that's really well said. I tried, like, I've already found my quotations for an assignment, but I just thought for the fun of it, let's ask AI for some quotations and see what it gives me.
Mhm.
And this was ninth grade, by the way. The AI gave me quotations. I'm like, wow, these would fit perfect with my essay. Maybe I should rethink my quotations. But I went to search them up in my book and they just did not exist at all.
Yep,
And I was,
yep, yep. I find that happens a lot. Yeah,
yeah, it probably will get better, but for now, it's just kind of untrustworthy.
yeah, yeah.
How do you think Gen AI would affect workflows in schools, whether it be like your postgraduate program or even high school setting?
So and this is my own personal bias because I like to write. And for me, reading and writing is where I derive a lot of meaning. And so the act of writing is very hard and I really wrestle with it, but it's really how I work out my thinking. And so if I were to rely on AI to do my writing for me, which a lot of people do, I think that would be detrimental. So I think that um, but I also recognize that sometimes just getting a head start on something and using AI to create initial outlines that you can then go and research and do your own writing on and can be helpful and can help some students. I think that AI can help students that are potentially like neurodiverse because I have one of my daughters is neurodiverse and she has a difficult time putting things in writing, but she's very creative. And so she could speak something, she could make music, she could do art, and she could have that translated into something that's maybe text based. And so I do think that there's a place where I think AI, if we really think about this and think about how it could be used in an education setting, could be very useful. The other thing that I think could be very useful, and this is more kind of practical,
Mhm.
is when you're in a class, let's say say you're in high school and you're taking an economics class, and there's a bunch of core principles that you need to understand about economics. And so you can read that stuff in books. And if you need to get more clarity to understand it, you can use AI to say, I don't really understand this term, explain this term. And so you can kind of use AI almost as an assistant for the teacher, where you can just ask a bunch of questions to get more clarity. And that helps with core concepts. And I think that's really helpful. Um, where teachers struggle and where students struggle are with things called threshold concepts. And this is probably going to be a new term for you. But in education theory, a threshold concept is a concept in a topic that has a bunch of characteristics. And some of the characteristics are once you learn it, all of a sudden the topic is much more expansive for you.
Oh,
You learn it, you're not going to unlearn it. But also, threshold concepts can be really counterintuitive and just hard to get, which is why people struggle with them. So, an example of this would be in economics. There's are you familiar? Have you ever taken an economics class at all?
I haven't taken it, but I've read economics and stuff, so I'll try to follow along.
So there's a threshold concept in economics called the present value of money.
Yeah.
And the present value of money would be, and it's not a very intuitive concept to understand, but once you understand the present value of money and that concept, all of a sudden how you think about economics becomes much more multidimensional. You can think about it across time. All of a sudden, the whole topic area becomes more interesting and more expansive for you. So teachers typically and students typically wrestle with these concepts because they're hard to teach because they're not intuitive,
Yeah.
and they're hard to learn because they're not intuitive. Yet they're really magical once you understand them. And so when you can, as a teacher, when you can help a student to understand the threshold concepts in a particular topic, that's when the student kind of comes alive for them. And that's when they really like they want to learn more because it's more interesting.
Mm,
So I think AI can do is maybe assist teachers in helping to explore threshold concepts in ways that perhaps are more multidimensional than a teacher could do. So if it helps somebody to understand, the present value of money by looking at an image, I could say to an AI, can you show me a picture of that? Can you, can you
um,
can you give me different ideas of people talking about this concept so that I can understand it from diverse perspectives? Or just if you're really struggling with one thing, I think AI can be a really great assistant for a teacher in helping students get there. And that's where, in higher education and even in high school, threshold concepts are, once somebody gets them in high school, this is usually when you find, somebody who's graduating that goes, oh my gosh, I'm totally going to do physics. Because the threshold concepts in physics they've understood, and it is super expansive for them now. And so that's why it's kind of like a magic button for education, in my opinion.
yeah. I think about it in terms of language because language is like something that I enjoy learning, and every time I can't exactly name one in any single language, but I know that there have been like threshold concepts for me where after I get that concept, it's
Mhm.
just like way easier and it lets you go deeper into the language.
Yeah. And can you imagine if for different topics there was some startup somewhere that has, or some tool somewhere that really helps people understand and unlock those things? Like that's
Yeah.
magical. That's where we really get to see human and AI working together as a very enchanted relationship. And I think we should start using words like that. Enchantment is fun.
Me too. I like the word whimsy as well.
Yeah, well, that's a great one.
Like for me, I can't translate the threshold concepts into words. But yeah, that's definitely something AI can help with. Actually, for the product of my project, I was thinking just to implement like an AI, like how to a class on how to use AI in my school, or like provide training for teachers on how to like efficiently let students use AI instead of just like being so afraid of it because right now we've actually gone back to just writing on paper, which isn't productive. And like you said, AI can offer some aspects of accessibility, but now like it's actually taking it away. So that is something that I'm hoping to do. But first, I need to interview people.
Yeah, so what's really interesting about that project is one of the things that we really don't talk about is how important in education it is to learn how to ask questions. And that's what prompting is, right?
Yeah.
We're teaching people how to ask questions and how to ask good questions. And so I think that rather than yeah, staying completely away from AI, maybe even starting out a curriculum where you give assignments that require students to ask questions, and they can write that on paper, and then the next time they start using those questions with AI, and maybe they go back and they reformulate their questions. And it would be kind of an interesting experiment, because the ability to ask questions is really how you make progress in an academic endeavor, because learning is about discourse and exchanging ideas and asking questions and learning and then asking more questions. So anyway.
That's actually an interesting point. I talked about this with a previous interviewee, Brian. So we were talking about this is philosophy actually. Descartes, cogito ergo sum. I think therefore I am. Because AI, some people think it does the thinking for you, so that like can cause some people to have an existential crisis. But that's not the full quote, right? The full quote is dubito cogito ergo sum. You need to doubt in order to think, in order to be. And the questioning, the prompting is the doubting. So that I really want everyone to know the full quote of Descartes. I don't know why only Cogito like survived.
There's a lot of philosophers who have commented on this, obviously.
Yeah.
One of the ones, the process philosopher that I spend most of my time reading is a philosopher named Alfred North Whitehead, who I'll paraphrase, but would also add to that quote. It's not so much doubting and thinking, but it's feeling.
Mm,
And so we really need to also recognize the feeling. Um, and then my research takes me into not only is the doubt, the questioning and the thinking and the feeling important, but what's even equally important is the relationships and the connections we have with everything else. So I don't just, doubt and question and think and feel and orient that way. I do it in relationship with everything around me.
mm,
And this is where there could be disagreement sometimes with the academic community and the tech community, because there is a real tendency just to look at AI as a very cognitive thing and a very linear kind of um, productive in a box. AI is a tool and it helps us to do XYZ. Um, where we really have to recognize that humans question and think and feel and are connected outside of this and also connected with the AI. So it is a very, um, it is, it is broader than just thinking, because humans don't just think,
yeah.
all of these other things. And that's a really important concept to recognize when we're creating AI tools and when we're using AI tools. Anyway.
Yeah. That's really well put. Like I can think it in my mind, but I can't speak it. But you can speak it, which is great.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to speak it. We'll have to, we'll have to talk again in a year once I'm worked through my proposal and my dissertation.
Ooh, that would, yeah, I would love to talk to you on that.
Okay.
Um, so, in your opinion, how could generative AI be utilized to optimize the way that people work?
I think this is going to take a little bit of time, but I think in order for a generative AI tool to be optimized for work, there needs to be profoundly more improvements in the user interaction or the user experience, because today generative AI is typically prompt based, and
Mm,
so it works really well for people who can articulate what they want and ask the question,
yeah.
and it's very verbal. Um, and text oriented. And I think that that doesn't work for a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people, frankly, don't like to use it in a
Yeah.
setting. And there's been some really interesting research that also shows, and it's something called the metacognitive overload, which is,
Oh, yeah.
so there's some interesting research from Microsoft on this topic. And what that means is when I'm typing a prompt and I'm asking the system to do something, I'm kind of typing the prompt and I'm asking the system to do something. and then it's coming back, and so it's kind of like one step removed. And that kind of thing works really well for people that are in technology jobs or like software developers, because I'm coding something and I'm coding something so that that code can affect this thing over here. And so that relationship, that kind of cognitive overload of AI is really designed for people that do coding. And so the people that created these interfaces are the ones that are doing the coding. So it works for them.
Yeah.
If you think about a different kind of way of being, so think about like a frontline worker, think of about a nurse or a teacher or a salesperson who is more oriented towards direct relational conversations and working things out and reasoning things in real time in that kind of more dynamic environment, not programming something to get something back, but actually direct involvement. What that research on metacognitive overload shows is people who aren't oriented in that more developer kind of way, um, it's too much of a tax for them. And so they just say, oh, I can't do this, forget it. And so they
Yeah.
don't want to use AI. So I think that, to go back to your question, if we recognize how people interact with each other and how people interact with computers, and we get better at understanding people, we can create interfaces into these technologies that are more natural for them to bring into how they work. And then we'll have more people that are using them and getting advantage of them. But for right now, it's really designed, AI is designed for the people who designed it, and that's the computer industry. And it works best for people in technology companies because it was designed that way, or technology jobs. But so it wasn't really designed for students and teachers and frontline workers and
Yeah.
that way. It'll get there though.
I hope so, because I do like using it for my research, especially because I like doing research heavy science fair projects.
Mhm.
And the coolest ones I pick tend to be the ones that I have no prerequisites for. So I don't need to read a mass amount of scientific articles, but I just use Copilot or ChatGPT to help me find them or
Yeah.
summarize if I don't have time.
So you're probably more of the target audience of what AI is. Like, I think that AI, besides software developers and coding and programming, which is really the audience that has really embraced it. So software developers are using AI and it's like perfect for them because it was designed for them. That secondary audience are researchers. And so the work that you're doing is research. And so it was really designed for that kind of work. And so you really are the target audience for that. But there are people like your teachers
Yeah.
who really, this is the act of teaching is not what it was designed for, but that's why I say it'll eventually get there, but it won't take too long, actually.
hmm Yeah, I
There's
would
a
like to see that
there's a,
happen.
there's a really interesting so some guys left Microsoft a while ago, and I've been watching this startup that they did, and they did a startup for veterinarians.
Oh,
It's an AI startup and it uses AI tools to equip a veterinarian for charting
oh,
of their interaction with an animal and their human, so that they can focus all of their attention on the animal and their human and less having to do this, charting. So kind of similar to like a, regular medical, but they are really focused just on veterinarians. And I love that they recognize that AI had so much value to deliver to this frontline worker,
hmm
but that it wasn't usable to this frontline worker. And so they created a business to make it usable to that audience. And so I think more and more and more of this is going to happen.
It actually did happen with healthcare workers for humans because I just talked to a previous teacher of mine yesterday. She is now at HealthPoint, and they do have the charting AI for humans as well, so doctors can focus on the interaction. And that is more focused on the privacy aspect of it because of charting, you don't want to give the private information of your patient to an AI, but there's been a specific AI developed for that, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. And I think we're going to see more and more of this. And that's why I said I'm not so much worried about um, AI reducing human creativity because I'm seeing AI really, just creating with AI is driving creativity.
Hmm.
I just hope they don't lose meaning along the way.
Yeah. Also, Zoom only gives me 40 minutes for
Oh,
um like one meeting, so but we still have more questions. Is it okay if I send you another Zoom link and we'll continue?
okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay.